Hi, I'm Wes. I'm one of the co-founders here at Demandable, and I'm here with Anna, our head of paid media. And today we're going to be talking about how fashion brands can acquire new customers with a full funnel paid media strategy. So to get started, first question is, what challenges are fashion brands facing when acquiring new customers?
Yep. So I would say the kind of main challenge is just so much competition. Consumers are now like spoiled for choice when it comes to just searching for a generic kind of fashion keyword. So it's quite hard to acquire new customers that way. I would say, pricing as well is like a massive challenge for fashion brands, especially with the cost of living crisis. People are paying more for their household bills, more for their mortgages, for example, so they have a lot less disposable income to be spending on their favorite brands. In fact, I think 57% of Gen Z actually are less brand loyal than they used to be pre-pandemic. It just kind of shows that maybe pricing is more of a factor than the likes of, sustainability, good customer service, things that people like brands could actually focus on to retain users in the past is less important now. So it just means that there's also a bit of like a higher returning user churn rate as a result of that, which just means it's more and more important to gain new customers, especially with brands such as, Temu and Shein, for example, are very, very low cost. So, whereas you might have had like a luxury brand that spend like months planning and their latest collection, Temu and Shein can kind of recreate these designs really quickly, really last minute at such a fraction of the price, like £5, for example, versus like hundreds of pounds from the main brand. So, customers will naturally just go to that lower price point, which just makes it really challenging for the kind of more well-established brands.
That makes sense. I mean, in terms of, obviously it's really clear what the challenges are out there. What would you say that fashion brands should be doing in the short term to try and react to these challenges and find new customers?
I would say most brands, if you don't already, should consider having a new customer offering. So whether that's 10% off your first order or like a free gift with purchase on your first order, that's definitely something you should consider. Even maybe having like a promotional period when you're really driving new customers, you could maybe increase that to like 15% off your order or 20% off your order, for example. And just making sure you're pushing that message out across the full funnel of your activity. So on social media and programmatic, for example, you can kind of push that message out to prospecting audiences only. Obviously, maybe serving a different message to returning users, maybe based on what they've already like looked at on your website. But you can also kind of push that message through paid search as well. I know people don't tend to have much of a like remarketing prospecting split on the likes of search ads, but you can definitely use site links and call outs to kind of push that message forward and try and promote your new customer offering to bring people in.
Wonderful stuff. Very good. And then I guess looking sort of slightly further to the medium term and longer term, things that might take a bit longer to implement, but have a big impact down the line. Where should brands focus once they've got the sort of short term ones done?
Yeah, so I think a really key part of a bit more of an advanced longer term strategy would be doing some like new customer acquisition bidding. So specifically bidding higher for new customers, which you can kind of do in a variety of different ways. But firstly, you kind of really need to understand how much is a new customer worth to your business. So you can kind of calculate that based on, data that you are kind of ingesting internally. So kind of understanding what the average order value is for a customer that like purchases on your website and how likely that person is to kind of repeat purchase over like a 2-3 year period, for example. That way you kind of know like how much a new person is worth to you, and from that point you can kind of decide how much you are happy to bid extra for that person. So you can actually do new customer acquisition bidding within Google Ads, for example. It's probably like the most advanced bid strategy platform than like Meta, for example, where I don't think you really have new customer acquisition bidding. But you can basically tell Google, I want to spend like £20 more on a new customer versus what I would usually spend on a returning user. So that's a really good first step. I would say with Google, they kind of use their default data, which isn't necessarily always the most accurate. So how you would kind of improve the accuracy of that data would be to upload customer audience lists based on your own internal data to better kind of feed Google's algorithms to say like who is actually a new versus returning user. So that's the first step. You can actually also use Google to bid only for new customers, which could be a good tactic if you have a specific new customer acquisition budget, for example. But I would always recommend, again, kind of supporting that with audience lists, so excluding people you know have converted on site, just to make sure that you are actually only targeting new users. And that's also a tactic you can address on Meta as well. Another strategy you can take would be maybe to push specific products or brands that you know have like a high new customer rate. So for example, I worked on Kate Spade, and they found that people, like, they would get more new users through their jewelry products versus their like bags or clothing. So what we did was we kind of separated out jewelry, pushed that category on shopping at a lower ROAS target, and put like an extra high new customer acquisition bid on that kind of category to kind of push new users that way. This tactic also worked for Matches Fashion. So they were a luxury retailer that kind of sold products in like the price range of hundreds of pounds versus like tens of thousands of pounds for a certain product maybe. So they would find, they actually had really high churn rates on the returning users, and it was really important for them to get new users in. And they found like the lower price products like Nike trainers, APC shirts, for example, had a bit less of a barrier to entry for new users. So what we did was we kind of, again, like segmented out those specific designers, put them into a separate shopping campaign with a separate ROAS target to really push them, and again, put like a high new customer acquisition bid on them too. Again, just to really push visibility on these. To drive new users. I think we got like 20% more new users year on year through that push period versus than previously. I would say as well, again, kind of going back to having a new customer acquisition budget, that always helps, because obviously you are going to be driving your ROAS down, trying to get new users. So just making sure you've kind of separated that budget and kind of understand that you're able to spend a bit more on these people, just to see if you can actually increase those new customer rates. A really good example that we actually have of a client that literally only go for new users, so they kind of spend all of their budget on new customer acquisition. It's our client called Field and Flower. So they are like a food box subscription service, but they are only interested in new customers. So we kind of take that new customer acquisition goal approach, but I've actually made it a little bit more advanced. So not only do we exclude our customers via audience lists, we've also actually created a data layer variable on the site to assign if someone's a new versus returning customer, and then actually created a custom conversion event off the back of that to feed into the Google algorithm. So it only bids towards new customer orders rather than all orders on the site. So again, it's just like a much better way of only like having the objective of driving new customers. And I think as a result of that, we saw a 30% increase in new customer acquisition at a 16% reduced CAC. So again, just kind of showing if you're feeding the algorithm the best data possible, it is going to be more efficient at getting those new users. A really advanced strategy that a lot of businesses should aspire to, but I know it's quite challenging because it requires a lot of data, would be kind of predictive lifetime value bidding. So utilizing your own kind of existing customer data and integrating that with Google Cloud Platform, it can kind of do a predictive lifetime value model. So for example, if a user's coming to site buying a Nike t-shirt, the predictive modeling can say, well, that person's likely to buy another 3 t-shirts over the next 2 years. So we'll put that predictive value into the and feed that into the bid strategies. And equally, someone who buys like an Alexander McQueen t-shirt tend to be more one-off purchasers, for example, in this scenario. So maybe they'll only buy another t-shirt in the next 5 years, for example. So that kind of also gets fed into the bidding algorithm. That way, you're kind of bidding towards new users that you think will be of a higher value over their lifetime rather than all new users.
No, thanks, Dan. That's a really aspirational strategy that people can move towards. Obviously, there's a lot of data required, but certainly a fantastic endpoint for people to aspire to.